The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a cascade of crystal and Dom Perignon. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse, Manhattan's skyline erupted in fireworks. Midnight had arrived. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't tear my eyes away from my husband's phone screen lying face up on the kitchen counter. Can't wait to kiss you at midnight, baby. Room 2012. Hurry. The message glowed beneath a contact name that made my stomach turn. Sienna Red Heart. Behind me, our guests counted down the final seconds of the year, their voices a distant roar against the thundering of my heartbeat. 10, 9, 8. I should have been in the living room, raising a toast with the 43 people we'd invited to our annual New Year's Eve party. Instead, I stood frozen in our kitchen, watching another message appear. Where are you? Everyone thinks you're getting more champagne. I'm waiting. My husband of 12 years, Daniel, had left 5 minutes ago, claiming we'd run out of moat. The caterers had stocked 3 cases in the wine fridge. I'd checked myself an hour earlier. 7, 6, 5. My hands moved without conscious thought, picking up his phone. His Face ID wouldn't work, but I knew his passcode, our anniversary date. The same date engraved inside our wedding bands. The irony wasn't lost on me as I unlocked the device that would unlock the truth about our marriage. 4, 3, 2. The messages flooded the screen. Photos. Videos. Declarations of love stretching back 8 months. 8 months of lies wrapped in business trips, late meetings, and weekend conferences. 1. Happy New Year. The celebration exploded around me, but all I could hear was the shattering of everything I thought I knew. Through the penthouse windows, the city celebrated new beginnings while mine crumbled at my feet. I set the phone back down, exactly as I'd found it, picked up 2 bottles of champagne from the fridge, stepped carefully over the broken glass, and walked back to the party with a smile that would have won an Oscar. Daniel would return in 12 minutes, disheveled and reeking of another woman's perfume. But I wouldn't confront him.
Not yet.
Because Sienna wasn't just his mistress. She was his business partner's 26-year-old daughter. The same business partner whose investment was keeping Daniel's company afloat. And I had exactly 365 days until the next New Year's Eve to orchestrate the most spectacular countdown of my life. 3 days before that fateful New Year's Eve, I'd been living in blissful ignorance, preparing for what I thought would be our best party yet. Daniel and I had built something beautiful together, or so I believed. Our penthouse on the Upper East Side was featured in Architectural Digest just that October, a testament to what the magazine called our harmonious partnership in both life and aesthetic vision. I'm Scarlett Winters. I kept my maiden name professionally. At 39, I'd built a successful career as a corporate events planner, orchestrating galas for Fortune 500 companies. It's how Daniel and I met 13 years ago at a Microsoft product launch I'd organized. He was the young tech entrepreneur with boyish charm and ambitious dreams. I was the woman who could turn any vision into reality. You make magic happen, he'd said that first night, watching me manage a crisis when the keynote speaker's flight got canceled. I'd found a replacement in 20 minutes and rewrote the entire program flow on the spot. Now, preparing for our New Year's party, I channeled that same energy. Our housekeeper, Elena, helped me arrange white orchids throughout the penthouse while caterers prepped hors d'oeuvres in our commercial-grade kitchen. Mrs. Scarlett, Mr. Daniel called. Elena said, her Colombian accent soft. He says he'll be late tonight. Another meeting with Mr. Castellano. Vincent Castellano, Daniel's business partner and savior, who'd invested $15 million in their biotech startup, Neuralink Solutions, just when they were about to go under. A silver-haired man in his 60s with old money and older values. Of course, I said, adjusting an orchid. Did he say what time? Maybe 11. That would make it the 3rd late night this week. But I understood, or thought I did. The FDA approval for their revolutionary brain-computer interface was pending, and everything hinged on the presentation they were preparing for January. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Roslyn, who ran a PR firm downtown. Still coming solo to your party. Marcus and I are officially done. I caught him sexting his CrossFit instructor. Men are trash. I texted back. I'm sorry, Rose. At least Daniel's too busy with work to even think about the gem, let alone an instructor. How naive those words would seem just 4 days later. Daniel came home that night at 11:47, exhausted but affectionate. He wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stood at our bedroom window, looking out at the city lights. I'm sorry, baby, he murmured into my neck. I know I've been absent lately. After the FDA approval comes through, I promise things will be different. You smell like perfume, I noted, but I was smiling. Did Vincent's assistant drown you in samples again? He laughed, the sound warm and familiar. Sienna was there. You know Vincent's daughter? She's helping with the investor presentation. Kid's got her MBA from Wharton now. Smart as hell, but yeah, she wears enough perfume to fumigate a building. Sienna Castellano. I'd met her twice at company functions. Glossy black hair, legs for days, and the kind of aggressive confidence that came from never hearing the word no. She'd looked at Daniel like he hung the moon, but I dismissed it as hero worship for a successful entrepreneur.
She's not a kid, I said.
She's 26. That's a kid to us, Daniel laughed, turning me around to face him. At 41, his hair was starting to silver at the temples, which only made him more distinguished. God, can you imagine being that young again? All that energy and no idea how to use it. He kissed me then, deep and familiar, and I melted into him the way I had for 12 years. We made love that night with the windows open to the December chill, the city spread beneath us, like a carpet of diamonds. 2 days before the party, I was having lunch with Rosalind at the Smith near Lincoln Center when she said something that should have set off alarm bells. So I saw Daniel last night, she said, stabbing at her kale Caesar. Really? Where? The Carlisle. I was meeting a client for drinks. He was at the bar with some stunning young woman. Figured it was a business thing. My chest tightened slightly. Must have been Sienna. Vincent's daughter. She's helping with the presentation. Rosalind raised an eyebrow. At 10 p.m.? At the Carlisle? The FDA meeting is in 3 weeks. They're probably pulling out all the stops, meeting potential investors. Right. Rosalind's tone was carefully neutral. Well, she's certainly attentive. Hung on his every word. Touched his arm a lot. She's 26 and probably sees him as a mentor, I said, but something cold was unfurling in my stomach. Probably, Rosalind agreed, then changed the subject. So, what should I wear to your party? I want to look devastating enough to make Marcus regret his life choices, if he sees the photos. But the seed was planted. That night, when Daniel came home late again, midnight this time, I was awake, pretending to sleep. He slipped into bed smelling of scotch and, yes, perfume. The same floral scent as before. When he draped his arm over me, I noticed a faint mark on his neck. Just a shadow, really.
Could have been anything.
I told myself I was being paranoid. This was Daniel. My Daniel, who still left me love notes on my coffee mug, who'd held my hand through my father's death 2 years ago, who'd spent 6 months learning ballroom dancing in secret just to surprise me for our 10th anniversary. The morning of New Year's Eve, everything seemed perfect. Daniel was up early making me breakfast, his famous brioche French toast with berries. Excited about tonight? He asked, sliding a plate in front of me. It'll be our best party yet, I said. The Weatherbys confirmed last minute. That makes 3 federal judges, 2 senators, and a Pulitzer winner. My brilliant wife, he said, kissing the top of my head. Vincent's coming too. He wants to toast the upcoming FDA approval. Is he bringing anyone? His new wife, I think.
Camille?
Caroline? The one who's younger than Sienna. Daniel rolled his eyes. And Sienna might stop by, if that's okay. She doesn't have plans. I studied his face as he poured orange juice, looking for tells. But he seemed completely relaxed, casual. Normal. Of course, I said. The more the merrier. He kissed me goodbye at noon, saying he had to run to the office to grab some files before helping with party setup. I'll be back by 3 to help with everything, he promised. He returned at 5:47, apologizing profusely as guests were arriving in 3 hours. I was deep in preparation mode, directing caterers and adjusting lighting with our AV team. I didn't have time to be angry. "Scarlett, you look absolutely stunning," Vincent Castellano said when he arrived at 9, his child bride on his arm. He was a handsome man in that way wealthy older men could be, with perfect teeth and an expensive tan. "Daniel's a lucky man." "Where is Sienna?" I asked, noting his daughter's absence. "Running late as always," he laughed. "She's at the office, actually. Wanted to finish something for the presentation. That girl's work ethic is insane. Gets it from her old man." The office, where Daniel had supposedly been all afternoon. By 11:30, the party was in full swing. Our penthouse was packed with New York's elite, champagne flowing, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Daniel was in his element, working the room, his charm on full display. He'd checked his phone obsessively all night, but I attributed it to work stress. 5 minutes to midnight, someone called out, and Daniel appeared at my elbow. "I think we're running low on champagne," he said, though I'd seen a caterer open a fresh case 10 minutes ago. "Really? I'll check." No. He was already backing away. "You're the hostess. I'll grab some from the kitchen. Be right back." He squeezed my hand and disappeared into the crowd. I watched him go, something uneasy stirring in my chest. Then I followed, staying back, watching him navigate through our guests. He didn't head to the kitchen. He went to our bedroom hallway, pulling out his phone. I lost sight of him as Judge Weatherby cornered me to discuss his daughter's upcoming wedding, which he wanted me to plan. By the time I excused myself, the countdown was starting. That's when I found myself in the kitchen, staring at Daniel's phone abandoned on the counter, Sienna's messages lighting up the screen like neon signs pointing to my husband's betrayal. The first week of January, I became someone I didn't recognize, a detective in my own life. Every morning after Daniel left for work, I sat at our dining table with my laptop, constructing a timeline of lies. The credit card statements told a story of their own. Charges at hotels during his supposed business trips to Boston and Philadelphia. A $3,200 receipt from Cartier in November. My Christmas gift had been a $500 gift card to my favorite spa. Dinner at 11 Madison Park on my birthday, when he'd claimed to be stuck in traffic coming from a client meeting. But it was his emails that truly destroyed me. I'd never invaded his privacy before, but I knew his passwords. We'd shared them years ago for practical reasons. In a hidden folder labeled Tax Documents 2019, I found their correspondence. October 3rd from Sienna. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about the way you touched me." Camilla asked why I was glowing at breakfast. If only she knew. October 4th from Daniel. "You're all I think about. These board meetings are torture, when all I want is to be inside you again. Scarlett's going to her mother's this weekend. Come over." I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but bile and rage. My mother. I'd spent that weekend holding her hand through chemotherapy treatments, watching poison drip into her veins to fight the cancer that would ultimately take her 6 weeks later. While I was watching my mother fight for her life, Daniel was fucking his business partner's daughter in our bed. The photos were worse. Sienna had sent dozens professional quality shots that looked like they belonged in Playboy and grainy selfies of them together in locations I recognized. Our weekend house in the Hamptons. The conference room of his office. The back seat of his Tesla. One video made me throw my laptop across the room. It was from December 15th, the night of his company Christmas party. I'd left early with a migraine. In the video, filmed in his office, Sienna was bent over his desk while Daniel. I couldn't watch more than 3 seconds. But what truly broke me wasn't the sexual betrayal. It was the emotional intimacy in their messages. November 20th from Daniel. "Scarlett's mother is getting worse. She's falling apart, and I'm supposed to be the supportive husband. But all I want is to escape to you. You make me feel alive again, see? Like I'm not just going through the motions of a life I settled for. 12 years of marriage. 2 miscarriages we'd grieved together. Building careers, building a home, building what I thought was an unshakable foundation. To him, it was settling. December 8th from Sienna. Daddy mentioned the FDA approval will probably come through in January. Once it does, and the company goes public, you'll have your freedom. We can stop hiding. Scarlett will get her payout in the divorce, and everyone wins. They were planning a future. Our divorce was a foregone conclusion, a business transaction to be handled after the IPO. I called in sick to my own company for the first time in 5 years and spent 3 days in bed, curtains drawn, phone off. Daniel thought I had the flu. He brought me soup, rubbed my back, told me he loved me. His performance was Oscar-worthy. I hate seeing you like this, he said, sitting on the edge of our bed, stroking my hair. Should I cancel my Boston trip? I can stay here, take care of you. The Boston trip. I'd seen the hotel confirmation. The Mandarin Oriental, 2 rooms booked, adjoining. No, I managed. The FDA meeting is too important. You're what's important, he said and kissed my forehead. I love you, Scarlett. So much. I wanted to claw his eyes out. Instead, I squeezed his hand and whispered, I love you too. That's when I made my decision. I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't cry, scream, or beg for explanations. I wouldn't give him the easy out of a messy, emotional divorce that he could spin as we grew apart while riding off into the sunset with his child bride.
No.
I was going to destroy him. Methodically.
Completely.
And he wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. The plan started forming that night. Daniel was asleep beside me, snoring softly, one arm thrown over my waist. I stared at the ceiling, running through the facts like a general preparing for war. First, the company. Neuralink Solutions was Daniel's baby, but I'd been there from the beginning. I'd introduced him to his first investors at my events. I'd edited his business plans, practiced pitches with him until 3 a.m., even helped design the company logo. More importantly, I knew things, like the fact that they'd exaggerated some early trial results to secure Vincent's investment. Nothing illegal, exactly, but enough to raise serious questions if the right people were asking. Second, Vincent Castellano, a traditional man who disowned his first daughter for marrying a woman, who'd built his fortune on family values and conservative principles, who believed in loyalty above all else. Vincent, who thought the sun rose and set with Daniel, his brilliant protege, who was going to make him even richer.
Third, the timeline.
The FDA approval was expected by late January. The IPO would follow within 6 months. Daniel's 42% stake would be worth approximately $60 million at current valuations. In our prenup, which I'd insisted on to protect my own business, assets acquired during marriage were split 50-50, but only if the marriage lasted. If divorce proceedings began before the IPO, I'd get half of his current assets, not future earnings. They thought they had it all figured out. Wait for the IPO, then divorce me, giving me half of the existing assets while Daniel walked away with the full value of his post-IPO shares. Sienna probably thought she was so clever, advising him to wait. But Sienna was 26. She'd never been to war. I had 11 months to prepare for the next New Year's Eve. 11 months to gather evidence, position pieces, and prepare for a countdown that would end more than just a year. Rosalind noticed something was different when we met for lunch in mid-January. You look. She studied me across the table at Balthazar. I don't know. Focused? Like you're planning a hostile takeover. Just busy with work, I said, cutting into my steak frites. Event season is picking up. How's Daniel? Still buried in FDA prep. Always, I said with a perfect smile. But it'll all be worth it when they go public. You'll be rich, Rosalind laughed. Private jet rich. We'll see, I said. Money changes things. Not always for the better. She didn't know how prophetic those words were. The FDA approval came through on January 28th. Daniel came home with a $5,000 bottle of champagne, giddy as a schoolboy. We did it, baby. We fucking did it. He spun me around our living room, and for a moment, I forgot I hated him. He was the man I'd fallen in love with again, passionate, alive, electric with possibility. I'm so proud of you, I said and meant it. I was proud of the man he'd been. The one who'd stayed up all night coding, who'd pitched to 100 investors before finding Vincent, who'd believed in his vision when everyone said he was crazy. That man was dead to me now. But I mourned him, even as I plotted against his replacement. Vincent wants to celebrate, Daniel said, pouring champagne. Big party at his estate next weekend. Black tie, the works. He specifically asked that you come. Of course, I said, clinking glasses with him. I wouldn't miss it. Sienna would be there, of course. The first time I'd have to see her since discovering the affair. I'd need to be perfect.
Charming.
Oblivious. The wronged wife, who didn't know she'd been wronged. To the future, Daniel toasted. To the future, I echoed, drinking deeply. He had no idea what future was really coming. Vincent Castellano's estate in Greenwich was a monument to old money trying to look older. 40 rooms, marble imported from Carrara, gardens designed by the same firm that did Versailles restoration. The party for Neuralink's FDA approval was exactly what you'd expect, senators rubbing shoulders with pharma executives, champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly rent, and enough ego to power Manhattan for a week. I wore Valentino, a black gown that Daniel had bought me for our 10th anniversary. You look incredible, he said as we pulled up the circular drive. His hand found mine, squeezed. I couldn't have done any of this without you. The lies came so easily to him now. Or maybe they always had, and I'd just been too in love to notice. Sienna was holding court near the pool house when we arrived, surrounded by a cluster of young analysts from Goldman Sachs. She wore red. Of course she did. A dress cut so low it was barely legal, her dark hair swept to one side to show off diamond earrings I recognized. The same earrings from the Cartier receipt. Our eyes met across the crowd. She smiled, bright, confident, predatory, and started toward us. Daniel. Scarlett. Her voice was honey over broken glass. Congratulations. This must be such an exciting time for you both. She hugged Daniel first, letting it linger a beat too long, her hand sliding down his back in a way that would look friendly to observers, but was clearly possession. Then she turned to me, air-kissing both cheeks, enveloping me in that cloud of perfume I now knew intimately from my husband's clothes. Scarlett, you look amazing as always, she gushed. That dress is stunning. Valentino. Good eye, I replied, my smile never wavering. And yours is memorable. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. Vincent's calling me inside. Some investors from Tokyo just arrived. He kissed my cheek. I'll find you in a bit. We both watched him walk away, his wife and his mistress, standing together like some perverse tableau. He's brilliant, you know, Sienna said, sipping her champagne. Daddy thinks he's the smartest entrepreneur he's ever backed. I know exactly how brilliant my husband is, I replied, emphasizing the word husband just slightly. She smiled, a cat with cream. It must be hard, though, being married to someone with such vision. They need so much understanding, support, freedom to explore their full potential. Daniel has all the freedom he needs. Does he? She tilted her head, studying me. Sometimes I wonder if marriage isn't just another cage. Comfortable, maybe, but still limiting. This child, this infant, standing here in earrings my husband bought her, philosophizing about my marriage. You'll understand when you're older, I said, my tone maternal, condescending. Marriage isn't a cage. It's a foundation. But I suppose when you've never built anything real yourself, it's hard to understand the difference. Her smile flickered. I have my MBA from Wharton. Bought by Daddy, I assume? Like everything else in your life. The mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Then she recovered, laughing. You're funny, Scarlett. Daniel always said you had a sharp tongue. Did he? When did he say that? During one of your late-night work sessions. She went very still. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two women circling like fighters in a ring. Then Vincent's voice boomed across the patio. Scarlett, there you are. Come, I want you to meet someone. I walked away without another word, leaving Sienna standing alone in her scarlet dress, no doubt wondering exactly how much I knew. The rest of February and March passed in a blur of careful planning. I hired a forensic accountant, quietly, through shell companies, to trace Daniel's financial movements. I had lunch with Vincent's ex-wife, Marianne, who was more than happy to share dirt over martinis and bitter memories. I even reached out to my lawyer, James Hoffman, for a hypothetical consultation about protecting assets in case of unexpected business complications. But the real goldmine came from an unexpected source, Elena, our housekeeper. "Mrs. Scarlett," she said one April morning, wringing her hands. "I need to tell you something. I was reviewing catering proposals for a gala, but something in her voice made me look up." "What is it?" "The young woman, Miss Sienna. She comes here when you're at work." My blood turned to ice, but I kept my voice steady. "How often?"
Many times. Twice last week.
"She has a key."
A key. To my home.
"Our home." "Elena," I said carefully, "I need you to do something for me. The next time she comes, I want you to text me. Don't let her know you've told me anything."
Can you do that?
She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Scarlett. I didn't know if I should say. You did the right thing." I pulled out my checkbook, wrote her a bonus check for $10,000. "This is for your loyalty and your discretion." The text came 3 days later, at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. I was in a meeting with the mayor's chief of staff about their annual fundraiser. I excused myself, claiming a family emergency, and drove home in record time. Daniel's Tesla was in the garage. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. I entered through the service entrance, the one Elena used. I could hear them before I saw them. Laughter from our bedroom, Sienna's high-pitched giggle mixing with Daniel's deeper tones. The door was partially open. I stood in the hallway, recording everything on my phone. "Told her I had a client lunch," Daniel was saying. "She believes everything." "Poor Scarlett," Sienna laughed. "Still playing the perfect wife. Does she still leave you those pathetic love notes on your coffee?" "Every morning. It's actually sad." "Well, enjoy it while it lasts. Come June, after the IPO, you'll be free. We can go to Mykonos like we planned. Maybe buy that villa we looked at online."
Can't wait, Daniel said.
God, I can't wait to stop pretending. I'd heard enough. I slipped back out the way I came, drove to Central Park, and sat in my car for 3 hours, playing the recording over and over. Each word was a nail in the coffin of their relationship. They just didn't know it yet. By May, I had everything I needed. Financial records showing Daniel had been siphoning money from the company to fund his affair. Emails between him and Sienna discussing insider information about the IPO. Photos, videos, and recordings that would destroy both their reputations. But the crown jewel was something I discovered in Daniel's old files, correspondence from 2 years ago where he'd admitted to Vincent that some of their early trial data had been optimistically interpreted. Securities fraud. Even the suggestion of it would tank the IPO. But I didn't pull the trigger.
Not yet.
I had a very specific timeline in mind. Summer came and went in a haze of perfect pretense. Daniel and I attended charity galas, hosted dinner parties, even took a weekend trip to Martha's Vineyard where he made love to me on the beach under the stars. If I hadn't known about Sienna, I would have thought our marriage was stronger than ever. The IPO was scheduled for September 15th. On September 14th, I had my annual checkup with Dr. Morrison. What Daniel didn't know was that I'd also scheduled something else, a consultation with New York's most ruthless divorce attorney. "Based on what you've shown me, Patricia Winters, no relation, despite the shared surname, said, reviewing my files, we can destroy him. But the timing has to be perfect." "After the IPO?" "The day after," she confirmed. "Let him think he's won. The papers will be served at his office, in front of everyone. But that's not the best part." She smiled, a shark scenting blood. "The prenup has a morality clause. Infidelity voids the 50-50 split. With the evidence you have, you'll get everything. The penthouse, the Hamptons house, and 70% of his assets, including the stock. 70% of $60 million. But that's not what I want," I said. She looked at me, surprised. What do you want? I want him to lose everything. Not to me. Just lose it. September 15th. The IPO launched at $47 per share. By market close, it was at $73. Daniel was worth $92 million on paper. That night, he came home with flowers, peonies, my favorite, and a velvet box. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a diamond necklace, easily worth 6 figures. He fastened it around my neck, kissing my shoulder. We're rich, baby. Really rich. And I know I've been distant lately, stressed about the company, but that's all going to change. I want us to travel, see the world, maybe think about kids again.
Kids.
We'd stopped trying after the second miscarriage. Now he wanted to play happy family while planning to leave me for a woman 13 years younger. That sounds wonderful, I said, fingering the diamonds. Should we celebrate? Actually, he checked his phone. Vincent's having a thing at his club. Informal, just the inner circle. You don't have to come if you're tired. No, I'll come. I smiled. I want to celebrate with you. The club was one of those old money Manhattan institutions where women weren't allowed as members until the 1990s, and the waiters knew your grandfather's drink order. Vincent had reserved the private dining room. 40 people, all congratulating themselves on their imminent wealth. Sienna was there, of course, in a silver dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was hanging on every word of Daniel's speech about innovation and perseverance, playing the role of devoted protege, while her hand rested on his lower back where she thought no one could see. I watched them from across the room, sipping champagne that tasted like ashes. Vincent approached me, slightly drunk, ebullient with success. Scarlett, my dear, your husband is a genius. An absolute genius. He certainly thinks so, I said. Vincent laughed. You must be so proud. And Sienna, she's learned so much from him. Like the daughter I never had, working with the son I never had. Perfect synergy. Perfect, I agreed. At 11 p.m., I excused myself, claiming a headache. Daniel barely noticed, deep in conversation with potential buyers from Singapore. Sienna watched me leave with a smirk that said she'd won. Let her think that. For exactly 3 more months. October passed in a blur of legal preparations. Patricia and I met weekly, always in different locations, building an airtight case. I moved half our liquid assets into accounts Daniel didn't know existed, completely legal, as they were joint assets. I documented every single lie, every business trip, every receipt. November arrived with the first snow and a call from Roslyn. I have to tell you something, she said. I saw Daniel and that Castellano girl at the Carlisle. They were intimate. Very intimate. Scarlett, I think he's having an affair. I know, I said simply. Silence. Then, you know? For almost a year. Why haven't you left him? Because leaving isn't enough. He destroyed our marriage, Rose. So, I'm going to destroy everything he loves. When? New Year's Eve. She whistled low. Poetic justice? Something like that. December crawled by with agonizing slowness. Daniel was practically living at Sienna's apartment now, barely bothering with excuses. He'd come home at 2 a.m., shower, slip into bed thinking I was asleep. I'd lie there, counting down the days like an advent calendar of revenge. December 28th. I sent out invitations for our New Year's Eve party. Bigger than last year, 60 guests, including several financial journalists I'd cultivated relationships with over the year. Another party? Daniel asked, distracted by his phone. I thought we might keep it low-key this year. It's our tradition, I said. Besides, you have so much to celebrate. The IPO, the company's success. Let's share it with everyone. He shrugged. Whatever you want. 3 days. 3 more days of pretending. December 31st, 4 p.m. The penthouse was perfect. Caterers in the kitchen, bartenders setting up stations, a string quartet tuning their instruments. I wore white, a custom Oscar de la Renta gown that made me look like an avenging angel. Appropriate, considering what was coming. Daniel emerged from his shower, finding me at my vanity. "You look beautiful," he said, and for a moment, his voice held something real. Regret, maybe. Or nostalgia for what we'd been. "Thank you," I said, applying lipstick in a shade called Revenge Red.
Perfect.
"Scarlet." He sat on the bed, watching me. "I know this year has been crazy. I know I haven't been the husband you deserve. But I want you to know I love you. I've always loved you." I met his eyes in the mirror. "I know exactly how much you love me, Daniel." Something flickered in his expression, uncertainty, maybe even fear. But then his phone buzzed, and the moment passed. Vincent just texted, "They're on their way." "With Sienna?"
Yeah.
He stood, adjusted his cufflinks. "Is that okay?" "Perfect," I said. "Absolutely perfect." The guests began arriving at 8. The penthouse filled with laughter, champagne, the glitter of New York's elite celebrating another year of success. Daniel worked the room while I played hostess, making sure everyone had drinks, introducing strangers, orchestrating the evening like one of my corporate events. Sienna arrived at 10, on Vincent's arm. She wore gold, tacky, but expensive, and made a beeline for Daniel the moment she saw him. They thought they were being subtle, standing too close, her hand brushing his, their eyes holding conversations no one else could hear. No one except me. At 11:30, I clinked a fork against my champagne flute. The room quieted. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began, my voice carrying across the room. "This year has been transformative. We've celebrated incredible successes, weathered challenges, and discovered truths that changed everything." Daniel was smiling, nodding along, probably thinking about the IPO. But before we count down to midnight, I continued. "I have a special announcement. A surprise, you might say." I pulled out my phone, connected it to our sound system. "You see, this year, I learned something important about the power of truth. How it can set you free. So, in the spirit of new beginnings, I want to share some truths with all of you." The first recording began to play, Daniel's voice, clear as crystal through our professional-grade speakers. "Told her I had a client lunch. She believes everything." The room went silent. Daniel's face drained of color. "Poor Scarlett," Sienna's recorded voice giggled. "Still playing the perfect wife." I let it play for 30 seconds, enough for everyone to understand what they were hearing. Then I stopped it. "That was from April," I said conversationally. "But don't worry, I have recordings from every month this year. Would anyone like to hear July?" That's when they discussed spending IPO money on a villa in Mykonos. "Scarlett." Daniel started toward me, but I held up my hand. "Vincent," I said, turning to him. "I have something special for you." The old man was frozen, his face purple with rage, staring at his daughter, who looked like she might faint. I pulled out a folder, handed it to him. Emails between Daniel and Sienna, discussing insider trading. Using information you shared with Daniel to make private investments. The SEC will be very interested, I think. "This is insane," Daniel shouted. "Scarlett, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm not done." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Mr. Chun, Ms. Rodriguez," I nodded to the financial journalists I'd invited. "I believe you'll be interested in these documents showing that Neuralink falsified early trial data to secure funding." Daniel admitted it in writing to Vincent 2 years ago. The journalists were already pulling out phones, typing furiously. "You crazy bitch!" Sienna screamed, lunging toward me, but her father caught her arm. "Is it true?" Vincent's voice was deadly quiet. "The trials. The data. Is it true?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. "There's more," I announced. "So much more. But I think I'll save it for the divorce proceedings which, I checked my phone, will be filed in exactly 7 minutes at midnight. Daniel, you'll be served at your office tomorrow. Or should I say, Sienna's apartment? Since that's where you actually live now." The room erupted. Guests pulling out phones, whispering, some actually applauding. Through it all, Daniel stood frozen, watching his world collapse. "Scarlett, please," he said, his voice broken. "Can we talk about this privately? Like you talked to me privately before starting your affair? Like you talked to me before planning to leave me after the IPO?" I never. June. I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to me. You were going to wait until June. Sienna thought she was so clever, making sure you got your money first. But here's the thing about prenups, Daniel. Adultery voids yours. I get 70% of everything, including your Neuralink shares. Vincent made a sound like a wounded animal. His company, his investment, his reputation, all destroyed by his daughter and his protege. But here's the best part, I said, raising my champagne glass. I don't want your money. I don't want your shares. I'm going to sell them all, tank the stock price, and donate every penny to charity. The American Cancer Society, specifically, in memory of my mother, who died while you were fucking your business partner's daughter. The countdown began around us. People had their phones out, recording everything, the scandal of the year unfolding in real time. 10. Daniel stepped toward me. Scarlett, I love you. 9. No, you don't. You love yourself.
8.
I made a mistake. 7. No, Daniel. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. 6. This was a choice. Every day for 8 months. 5. Sienna was crying, mascara running down her face. 4. Vincent looked like he might have a heart attack. 3. Daniel reached for me, but I stepped back. 2. Goodbye, Daniel. 1. The room exploded in chaos. Champagne, shouting, cameras flashing. Through it all, I walked calmly to the elevator, my white dress trailing behind me like wings. Happy New Year. Indeed it would be. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By January 2nd, the recordings had gone viral. Manhattan's messiest midnight was trending on social media. The SEC launched an investigation into Neuralink by January 3rd. Trading was suspended by the 5th. Daniel was removed as CEO on January 7th. Vincent Castellano withdrew his investment and sued both Daniel and his own daughter for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. The company that had been worth hundreds of millions collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. I filed for divorce as promised, but Daniel had nothing left to take. The penthouse was in my name. I'd made sure of that years ago. His accounts were frozen pending investigation. He moved in with his brother in Queens, a spectacular fall from grace that the tabloids documented with glee. Sienna fared no better. Vincent disowned her publicly, cutting her off from the family fortune. Her Instagram, once full of yacht parties and designer goods, went dark. The last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a gym in Hoboken. But the real poetic justice came in February. I was having coffee at my favorite spot in Soho when Daniel walked in. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 6 weeks, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes, the kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. He saw me, hesitated, then approached. Can I sit? I gestured to the empty chair. You destroyed me, he said simply. No, I corrected. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. I loved you, he said, and for the first time, it sounded true. I know I had a terrible way of showing it, but I did love you. I think I just got lost. You didn't get lost, Daniel. You made choices. Every day you chose her. You chose lies. You chose to betray not just me, but Vincent, your employees, everyone who believed in you. I know. He stared at his coffee. I've lost everything. Good. He looked up, surprised by my coldness. My mother died thinking her son-in-law loved her daughter, I said. She died grateful that I had you. Do you know what that means? She died believing a lie. That's what I can't forgive, Daniel. Not the sex, not even the betrayal, but that you let my mother die thinking you were a good man. Tears ran down his face. I'm sorry. I know, I said, standing. But it doesn't matter anymore. I left him there, crying into his coffee, and felt nothing but peace. The divorce was finalized in April. I got everything, though everything turned out to be less than expected after the SEC fines and lawsuits. I didn't care. It was never about the money. I sold the penthouse, too many ghosts, and bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Rosalind helped me decorate, turning it into something warm and entirely mine. I threw myself into work, building my event planning company into something bigger, better. Without Daniel's shadow, I thrived. In June, on what would have been our 13th anniversary, I received a package. No return address, but I knew Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a single photo, our wedding day. We looked so young, so happy, so certain that love would be enough. On the back, he'd written, "I'm sorry I killed the people in this picture. They deserved better." I burned it in my fireplace, watching our faces curl and blacken, turning to ash like everything else we'd built together. That December, I decided to have another New Year's Eve party. Smaller this time, just close friends, people who'd stood by me through the scandal. Rosalind arrived early to help set up. "You know what today is?" she asked. "December 31st? 1 year since you went nuclear on Daniel's life." I smiled, arranging white orchids. I still loved them, refused to let him ruin flowers for me. Best decision I ever made. "Do you really mean that?" I considered the question. The year had been hard.
Brutal, even.
There were nights I'd cried until I couldn't breathe, mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible. The loneliness was sometimes unbearable, the bed too big, the silence too loud. But I was free. Free from lies, from betrayal, from the constant feeling that something was wrong, but not knowing what. Free from loving someone who didn't love me back. "Yes," I said finally. "I mean it." The party was perfect. Intimate, warm, real. No pretense, no networking, just friends celebrating survival. As midnight approached, we gathered on my roof deck, the Manhattan skyline glittering before us. 10. I thought about Daniel, probably alone somewhere, watching the same sky. 9. I thought about Sienna, learning that actions have consequences.
8.
I thought about Vincent, betrayed by the two people he'd trusted most. 7. I thought about my mother, who'd wanted so badly for me to be happy. 6. I thought about the woman I'd been, trusting, naive, blind. 5. I thought about the woman I'd become, stronger, sharper, alone but not lonely. 4. I thought about forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. 3. For not seeing, for seeing and denying, for staying too long. 2. But mostly, for surviving. 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks exploded across the city, and I raised my champagne to the sky. To new beginnings. To endings that set you free. To the countdown that changed everything. Rosalind hugged me tight. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I said and meant it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't check it, but curiosity won. "Watching the fireworks from my brother's fire escape. Thinking of you. Wishing I'd been the man you deserved. Happy New Year, Scarlett. May bring you everything I couldn't."
D.
I deleted it without responding and went back to my party, to my friends, to my life. Later, as I cleaned up champagne glasses and confetti, I found myself in front of the mirror in my hallway. The woman looking back at me was different from the one who discovered her husband's affair exactly 1 year ago.
Harder, maybe.
Definitely scarred, but also stronger. Real in a way I hadn't been before, when I was playing the role of perfect wife to a perfect lie. The doorbell rang, unexpected at 2 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery man with a small package. Delivery for Scarlett Winters? At this hour? Instructions said to deliver exactly at 2 a.m., ma'am. It's paid for, including the inconvenience fee. I signed for it, curious despite myself. Inside was a jewelry box from Cartier. My hands shook as I opened it. Diamond earrings. Different from the ones he'd given Sienna, but similar enough to make the message clear. A note was attached. "These were always meant for you. I was just too much of a coward to give them to you directly. They're not an apology, nothing could be. Just a reminder that somewhere, in some timeline, there's a version of us where I wasn't a fool. Where I chose you. Every day. Like I should have."
D.
P.S. The receipt is in your name. From before. I bought them the day before I met her. I never gave them to you because by then, I didn't deserve to. I know I still don't.
but they're yours.
They were always yours. I looked at the receipt. October 15th, 2 years ago. The day before he'd met Sienna at a company event I'd helped organize. The last day of our real marriage, though neither of us knew it then. I put the earrings back in the box, placed it in my closet with the other artifacts of my former life. Not out of sentiment, but as evidence. Proof that even liars sometimes tell the truth. That even betrayers once knew how to love. That endings, no matter how necessary, still carry grief for what was and what might have been. My phone rang. Roslyn, making sure I was okay. I'm good, I told her. Just taking out the trash. Literal or metaphorical? Both. Want company? I can come back. No, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. I'm actually enjoying the quiet, and I was. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like possibility. Like the pause before a song begins, full of potential energy, waiting to become something beautiful. I made myself tea, sat in my living room watching the city slowly sleep, and thought about time. How we mark it in befores and afters. Before the affair, after the discovery. Before the divorce, after the freedom. Before the countdown, after the explosion. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe time wasn't about befores and afters, but about durings. During the marriage. During the betrayal. During the revelation. During the recovery. And now during the becoming. Becoming who?
I didn't know yet.
But for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. The sun rose over Brooklyn, painting the brownstones gold and pink. A new day. A new year. A new life. Built on the ashes of the old, but no longer defined by them. I raised my teacup to the sunrise, to endings that teach us how to begin, to the countdown that had ended everything and started something else entirely. Somewhere in Queens, Daniel was probably watching the same sunrise. Somewhere in New Jersey, Sienna was starting another day of her diminished life. Somewhere in Connecticut, Vincent was learning to live with betrayal by those he'd loved most. We were all survivors of the same explosion, scattered like shrapnel across the tri-state area, each nursing our wounds, each finding our way forward. But only I had chosen the explosion. Only I had lit the fuse, knowing exactly what would burn. That made all the difference. The difference between being a victim and being a victor. Between being destroyed and doing the destroying. Between letting time happen to you and making time work for you. 12 months ago, I'd stood in my kitchen, champagne and broken glass at my feet, discovering my husband's betrayal as the world celebrated new beginnings. Now I stood in my own kitchen, in my own home, celebrating my own beginning. Not new, exactly. You can't unknow what you know, unfeel what you felt, unlive what you've lived. But renewed, rebuilt, reclaimed. The countdown was over. The new year had begun. And this time it was really, truly, finally mine. Epilogue. 5 years later. I almost didn't recognize him. I was in Paris for Fashion Week, coordinating events for 3 major houses, when I saw him at a cafe near the Marais. Gray hair now, not just at the temples. Thinner. Reading alone at a corner table. Daniel looked up, as if sensing my gaze. Our eyes met across the morning crowd. He half stood, uncertain, and I found myself walking over. Scarlett. Just my name, nothing else. Daniel. You look. He paused, searching for words.
Happy.
You look happy. I am. And I was. My company had expanded internationally. I'd found love again. Nothing like the burning passion I'd had with Daniel, but something steadier, safer, with a divorced architect named James who knew my whole story and loved me anyway. We were getting married next month, a small ceremony in Tuscany. Everything Daniel and I should have been, but weren't. I heard about your company, he said. Congratulations. Thank you. What are you doing in Paris? Consulting. Helping startups avoid my mistakes. A bitter smile. Turns out being a cautionary tale pays reasonably well. And Sienna? No idea. Last I heard, she married some hedge fund guy. Vincent still won't speak to either of us. We stood there, 2 people who'd once promised forever, Now strangers with shared history. I should go, I said. Scarlet, wait. He pulled out something from his jacket. An envelope, aged and worn. I've carried this for 5 years. Could never send it. But since you're here, I took it, noted my name in his handwriting. Read it later, he said. Or don't. Just. I needed you to have it. He left money on the table and walked away, disappearing into the Parisian morning. I never saw him again. That night, in my hotel room overlooking the Seine, I opened the letter. Scarlet, they say you never know what you have until it's gone, but that's not true. I knew exactly what I had. I knew you were brilliant, kind, loyal, and loving. I knew you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I knew, and I threw it away anyway. That's what I can't forgive myself for, not the ignorance of loss, but the arrogance of having. I had everything and wanted more. Had trust and chose betrayal. Had love and chose lust. Had you and chose her. You asked me once during the divorce why I did it. I gave you excuses, midlife crisis, ego, opportunity. But the truth is simpler and worse. I did it because I could. Because I thought I was smarter than consequences. Because I believed I could have everything without paying for anything. You taught me otherwise. Not cruelly, but completely. You gave me exactly what I deserved, the full weight of my choices, the complete cost of my betrayal. You held up a mirror and made me see who I really was. Not a successful entrepreneur or a devoted husband, but a liar and a coward who destroyed the best thing in his life for the emptiest of pleasures. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and you shouldn't give it. But I wanted you to know that every day since that New Year's Eve, I've thought about the man I should have been, the husband you deserved, the love we could have built if I hadn't burned it down. I hope you found someone who sees you clearly and chooses you completely. Someone who knows that you're not just enough, you're everything. Someone who understands that love isn't about what you can get away with, but what you can give without counting. Be happy, Scarlet. Be loved. Be chosen every day the way I should have chosen you. The fool who lost you. Daniel. I folded the letter, placed it in my purse. Not to keep, but to burn later, a final ceremony for a love that had died years ago. Outside, Paris glittered in the darkness, and somewhere a clock tower chimed midnight. Another day ending, another beginning. Time moving forward, always forward, carrying us away from who we were toward who we're becoming. I thought about that New Year's Eve 5 years ago, when I destroyed everything with surgical precision. It had been the right choice, the only choice, but reading Daniel's letter, I understood something I hadn't then. Revenge might be satisfying, but it doesn't heal. Only time does that. Time and the choice to move forward, to build instead of burn, to love instead of linger. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Can't wait to marry you next month. You're everything. I smiled, texted back. Landing tomorrow at 3. Pick me up? Always. Always. Such a dangerous word. Daniel had promised always to. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the point wasn't to avoid promises but to make them anyway, knowing they might break, knowing we might break, but choosing to believe in the possibility of keeping them. The clock tower chimed once more, and I raised my wine glass to the window, to Paris, to time itself,
To the countdown that ended everything. To the years that followed.
to the love that came after.
To the woman I became. To always, however long it lasts.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.